Hello, it's me again. My neighbours probably think I'm nuts because I'm sat outside the front of my house. Although I don't think anybody's looking. Anyway, taking the opportunity while I'm drying this one out from last week's walk to go through some tent basics. Now, you can pay a fortune for a tent. You can pay thousands for super lightweight things, and I think I've already gone through that. I'm not really a gram counter, although it is nice not to carry a lot of weight. I have tried to go as minimalist as I can afford. So what we've got here is we've got the first tent that I got, really. This has its benefits, we'll go through that in a little bit. This was the cheapest tent out of the lot when I first started deciding to go wild camping. This next one here, and you can see a bit smaller, a bit narrower and a lot lighter weight. It's by certainly no means the most expensive tent in the world, but it's a tent. It's a means of shelter, and that's what I would stress. Don't get too wound up about makes and models. Check out specs, make sure that it's waterproof, and just make your night a bit more comfortable. But yeah, this is my chosen one at the moment. And then we've got this little pack here. You can see that's a lot less. This is a minimalist shelter. We can go a little bit more minimal, but I do like to have a few little comforts. So we'll go through in order. I'm going to put this one out last because I want to dry it out tonight. So we'll go with this one. So this tent, this is a Northridge tent. I think this is one of Go Outdoors makes as well. And it's served me well, very well in fact. It's been through some hellish weather, some really bad rain. The one thing I would say that it didn't really cope with very nicely is the hot weather, believe it or not. Woke up in Ambleside at about 10 in the morning after a good night, and I thought I was going to explode with the heat. So yeah, this tent is what's called an outer first. Now the benefits of an outer first are that if you can get your fly sheet up and pegged out, it means that you've got somewhere to put your inner, which is your bedroom basically, and your storage. It also means you can throw that in there along with your bag to stop it getting too wet. Now, if it's just started raining, great, but if you've been walking in the rain, there isn't really much point in throwing your bag in there. But it is nice to get a nice dry bedroom or a nice dry living space. So I'm going to put this at super fast time and then show you through some of the features. We're not going to go to town on it because we've got another 2 tents to do, and I'm already talking a lot. So here we go. Now I haven't put this fully up because it's coming straight back down again. But one of the benefits of this is that it's quite wide, and the other one is not as wide as this, but it's getting on for that. That's because I always buy 2-person tents. The reason being is it gives you a lot of space on one side to put your gear in, get things in out the wet. You do have this awning space here, which you can cook in, put your boots in, but it is nice to have those things that you want to keep dry in with you. We also have some hanging loops and things for lights and things like that. So, this is quite a weighty tent. This is about 2.8 kilograms, which doesn't sound a lot, but when you've got the rest of the gear on your back, it certainly mounts up. Right, the next one is what I would class as my super lightweight. This doesn't really weigh anything. I think it's about 500 grams in total. And this comprises of 2 things. Now, one of them is what's called a tarp. Yes, a lot of you will have known what a tarp is, but some don't. Now, the tarp is really versatile. If I had the inclination, I'd probably carry one of these wherever I went anyway. on the fell, because it means you can hunker down for the night, you can get out the rain, you can create a little shelter, and that's what we're going to do now. It also, it doesn't as much rely on it, but it's helpful, especially if you're out on open moorland. In fact, it's a definite on open moorland, and you haven't got any trees or branches to attach to. It makes a nice shelter that's raised off your face. You can't peg this out and sleep inside it without walking poles, but it's not very pleasant. It requires one of these, which is, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this one up. This one may miraculously just appear, depending how I get on, because it has honestly been quite a while since I've done this. This is an OEX top. It's by no means the lightest, they're all lighter. Alpkit do a light one, Rab do a very light one, and there are other vendors. The Rab one is extremely expensive. This one really didn't set me back that much, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to a tent, it's not that heavy at all. Contains lots of eyelets for fixing points, including, if I can find one, midway ones as well, which are all waterproofed. And right, talked enough, I'll go and put this up. Right, so we've got a very, very basic shelter. There's lots of other ways you can do this. You can put your peg to the top and lift it right up. You can use a couple of tent poles on the outside to make an open-ended tent shape. You can even put your tent pole slap bang in the middle and fold the corners out into a pyramid. It does give you less footprint. I find this one's nice and comfortable. It's big enough for two people. And especially if you're going to get a bit of gear in the bottom, which will bring me on to my next bit. So on a summer's night with a sleeping mat, this isn't actually too bad. Nice and airy. If you want to, you can stick your head out of the tent awning and have a look round. It's quite nice. But when the weather comes in, it's always good to have the back of the tent or back of the top facing the wind. Because you don't want to get too much rain in here, although with the size of this you can get right out the back. The problem is that as the ground gets saturated, even if you're on a sleeping mat, you're going to create little dimples in your sleeping mat with your butt and your shoulders and your head, and they can get waterlogged, which makes for a very uncomfortable night's sleep, especially if you're in a down sleeping bag. So anyway, I'm going to fast forward this bit and show you the next bit. For the purposes of art, I've opened up the front here. This is a good thing about an adjustable. I've got another set of trekking poles for winter, which are rigid. They're one size, so they're not very good. In fact, they're impossible because they're taller than the apex of this. So an adjustable pole, make sure they're nice and tight so they don't slip during the night. I may actually do another video on different tarp setups as well. So I always carry a few guidelines for different setups. But the other thing I've got in here is a bivvy bag. Now, a bivvy bag, some of you harder fell walkers will actually use one of these on your own, and I have. It's very, very comfortable, very waterproof. If you're claustrophobic, they really are no good for you. And you'll see why in a minute. So, we're going to put our bivvy bag in our tent. I keep calling it a tent, it's not a tent. Now, as you can see, if I move out of the way, this is basically just a waterproof sack. It's got a zip on it, and it's got a highly waterproof base on it and a water shedding cover on the top of it. Now, you can get lots of different types of these. You can get hooped bivvies, which basically means there is a tent pole, a mini tent pole that goes over the top, and that keeps this off your face. And there are other bivvy bags which are a lot simpler, which are basically just plastic bags, usually for the case of emergency. So to save my bivvy bag from getting damaged, Good job it's not smell-o-vision. I'm going to take my shoes off and get inside. Now, I'm about 6'1", and I'm still 4 foot off the bottom of the tent here. But this is your bivvy bag, so what you would have, depending on how you like your setup, you would either have your mat inside with you, or you'd have it on the floor. The only thing is you're not going to get any water through the bottom, so if you don't mind your mat getting wet and carrying it, then that's fine. And a sleeping bag if it's not too cold. Now on a night like tonight, I'd probably just sleep in my clothes nice and easy. But what we've got, and it may go a little bit loud on the mic, I apologise, is your hood comes over, and you can hear that I'm sure, it zips up. So if you are sleeping out without a tarp, you're not going to get wet. It's got an overlap and a little bit of Velcro to keep that down. Hello. The other good thing about sleeping under a tarp and in a bivvy bag is, if it's not raining, that's going to be loud. If it's not raining, you can sit here and look up at the stars all night, which is quite cosy. But that's the setup I've got going here. So we'll move on to the final tent, which is a lighter weight option. It's a little bit smaller, but the difference between that one and the first one is the first one was an outer first, the second one is an inner first. Now it's got its pros and cons just like the first one, but let's move on to that. Right, last but not least, this is the tent that I used on the Cumbria Way, and I've used a few times before as well. It's much lighter weight than the first one. The difference between this one and the first one, apart from the weight, are two things. One's the internal size. It is a tiny bit smaller, but not so small that I can't fit my gear in. It's still classed as a two-person tent. This is made by a company called OEX, otherwise known as Go Outdoors, or thereabouts, I think anyway. It's a company that first started selling through them. And I've got a few bits and pieces of them, and while it's certainly not high-end mountaineering kit, I could quite easily recommend quite a bit of it. So this, the other thing about this tent is it's inner first. So we'll put this one up and see what you think. Right, the first thing to note about this, when I said it was an inner first, is we've got this lovely big space here. It's got a mesh top, it's got a mesh door, so we can keep all the beasties out. But what you can't do is you can go and lie inside on a hot summer's night without a big cover over the top keeping the heat in. And some nights when you're in your sleeping bag, you don't actually need that. Right, so the next bit to put over, because this is the bit that needs drying, and this is going to get left up tonight, this is the fly sheet. Now the fly sheet does require the inner. That's the only difference between the first two, is you can't carry just the outer on the first tent and make it almost like a bivvy. So it does work out lighter than this, but if you want to have that little bit of comfort away from the bugs, and also a little bit more heat kept in as well, because it does make a difference having an inner, then this is the one I take when I'm on long distance hikes. Nice and light. It's 1.7 kilograms I think, or 1.75, so it's not that heavy. There are lighter options, but like I say, a lot more expensive options. So let's get the fly sheet put on and you can see what it looks like with that. That's better. It's a little bit dark, but anyway, it gives you some idea of what it's like in here. So we've got some mesh pockets over here for putting important things like your Instagram connection. And then what we've got is an inside and the outer fly sheet are separated by an air gap. Now they're not quite doing that at the minute because I haven't got it tied out properly. I'm just wanting to wear it a little bit. But as you can see, probably down the middle here, if I lie down, I'm 6'1" thereabouts, and it's very comfortable. Got lots of room for the toe box on my sleeping bag. You probably can't see my head now, can you? Anyway, and you can see there's loads of room here for either another person or your gear. So that's that. Now I'm going to leave this tent up to dry for a bit because it does need it, and it's got some wee beasties that didn't survive the journey home knocking around, so I'll have to brush them off. And that stands for any of your kit. The last lesson of the day is always look after your kit. Keep it clean, keep it dry, keep it washed, keep it waterproofed. It'll last you a long time. The first tent you saw I've had for 15 years and it's still waterproof, it still holds water, and it's been used multiple times every year. So there you go. I hope that's been informative. If you've got any questions or you want any advice, stick a thing in the comments thing down there. Share it with anybody you might know who might be going out on some outdoor adventures. And don't forget, we the Royal Way that is, do guided walks in the lakes, and we do some overnight trips as well. So give us a heads up if you know anybody or you would like to go yourself. Very reasonable rates, you know, right? Speak to you later. Bye.